Here we have a Gearshift from a Pursuit G5. It's just been removed. I was having a problem with it. The typical problem of you can't get the key out, and you could move it in and out of gear when into different gears it wasn't locking into gear. And it turned out that the problem was this little pin here, this steel pin. If you look really close, you will see this pin here had simply fallen out. Now, this is now been repaired, and I'll tell you how to repair it in a little bit. But as you notice here, when I let it go in normal resting place in park, it raises this little switch up, and that little switch actually runs through to your ignition and activates the selenoid to let your key out. In short, now it's all electrical, of course, but the idea here is that switch has to be closed in order to get your key out. And what happens with this pin is a design flaw, and a design flaw is related to this over here. As you'll notice, as I'm pushing this, it is hitting and it's being stopped by this lever. And if I pull back on this lever, I can then put it into gear. Now, the reason what this lever is all about is, I'll flip it upside down. You will see that it's a selenoid. And what happens is when you put your foot on the brake, it pushes that rod out, that solenoid rod out, and it basically allows you then to pull this back. Now the problem is when you pull back on this and your foot is not on the brake and you push on this a lot, what happens is it works loose, and this particular pin then eventually will fall out. So it's a design flaw. Instead of having this particular switch reinforced on both sides, it is only reinforced on the one side. Now you're probably wondering how I fix this. Well, I'll get to that in a little bit. It's very important though to understand what happens here. So when I pull back on this and put it into reverse, oops, the first thing I got to do, of course, is pull back here. And you'll see this is in reverse. There's a specific spot for it. I'll flip over here. That's reverse. Now you can't take it in and out of reverse very easily. You can pull it back into the other gears to drive. You can see how it goes into the different positions. So it's a bit of a locking mechanism for your different gears. Now, how did I fix this problem? Well, the first thing is, if you notice, see how it's going down a little bit? Because it's hitting this. So when I pull back on this all the way, you'll see that there's a little plastic rod, and that rod goes up, or starts here and it goes up and through and hooks up to the head here. And when I push this button, it actually pushes the rod down. Now, that particular rod has a hole in it, and that pin simply just pushes into that hole. This pin also has a little knurled gear right in the middle, and that knurled gear is actually what holds it into the plastic. So it has it's a very small round teeth on it. Those teeth bite into the plastic. The issue, of course, is that this works itself loose because this keeps grabbing and then it keeps pulling it to one side, and eventually it breaks loose from the inside of the plastic. So how does one fix this? Well, the first thing you can do is locate your pin because it's probably fallen out, and you can just simply reinsert it back in there, but it won't stay for very long and eventually work itself loose again. So the next thing is, how am I going to make sure this fast? Well, we go to the infamous JB weld, and you use a very small amount of JB weld on the pin, on the center gear piece, and then you push it in. You will note here I also put a little bit of white lithium grease on both sides to lubricate it a little bit to make it easier, just in case it sticks. Okay, and of course you leave it sit overnight. And that means when I pull on this here, it still moves a little bit, but it's pretty solid on there. You have to give it at least 24 hours for the JB weld to set in there. So don't expect to fix it and then all of a sudden start driving and everything's fine. So that being said, it's a fairly easy fix. To get this out, of course, you've got these bolts here you have to take off, and also this would be facing toward the front of the car. This is your linkage cable. It just pries off. This piece here, which is an adjustment cable piece, you squeeze the teeth together. There's also a steel collar piece you pull out, and you squeeze these teeth together, and it just comes out. So that's how you can get the cable piece off. It's a little tricky, but you can do it. These bolts are just 13 millimeter bolts, fairly straightforward. And once you have those off, and then you got one more thing to do. You have to unplug this, of course, and you just pull back on this piece here and undo it. And then you can just simply remove this out of the car and operate on it. Now this is normal position. Sometimes you will see that when they work loose, what they can do is get on the inside of this switch, because what it can do is it can work toward that way, and then it gets locked on the inside, and then you can't seem to move it at all. And some people end up reefing on this, and what they end up doing is they break the plastic rod piece inside, or they end up snapping something off in here, and then the only thing you can do then is replace the whole piece. So the idea is, if it locks up on you, don't panic. Okay, first thing you can do is see if you can find the pin. You can take the console off. The console is a plastic piece. You have to get at there's two small bolts. You push the seats ahead, you'll see them on the side of the console, and then there are a couple other 8 millimeter bolts on the top. You have to pull the side pieces off where the fuse panel is, and then the other side, and they're just patch panels that pull off, and then there's an upper and lower 8 millimeter bolt, and then the console could just pull right off. So this will take you a whole 10 minutes to do. Look for this pin. If you can get this pin, just pull it out. Don't need to call a tow truck, drive it home, and then you can fix it once you get home. And that is about it. Hope this helps you out.